The record business is a very lucrative business. It's the only business where a man can go to sleep tonight poor and wake up tomorrow rich man. We are dealing with your life. Well, a lot of people play with this record business, man. They use this glamour as a beautiful little bubble to flash in front of the outer world. But that bubble is very dangerous.
Without limousines and nightlife, the record business might be just another assembly line job. Davis knows the difference and uses all the tools.
Barry White, the man with the voice that defined an era of love song. But as adored as he was, Barry kept one dark secret close to his heart, a secret about one of the most powerful figures in the industry.
He's one of the few surviving music moguls from the 1960s.
Deep down, we all wanted to be Clive Davis.
Why did he stay silent? And could it be that this secret was part of the reason he had to pay such a high price?
We are dealing with your life. Well, a lot of people play with this record business, man. They use this glamour as a beautiful little bubble to flash in front of the outer world. But that bubble is very dangerous.
Did Barry White know something so shocking it could bring down Clive Davis, one of Hollywood's most untouchable legends? And what was the connection that ultimately haunted Barry until his final days? Barry White's music didn't just make him a superstar, it put him face to face with some of the most powerful players in Hollywood. But as his career rose, so did his awareness of the industry's darkest sides. Barry was known for being outspoken, yet when it came to one man, Clive Davis, he was silent, almost too silent. Why did Barry refuse to speak out? And what did Clive Davis have to do with the turning point in Barry's career? Clive Davis has long been seen as the puppet master behind some of the biggest names in music. One of the most well-known examples came from pop star Kelly Clarkson. Back in 2013, Clive released a memoir, The Soundtrack of My Life, where he made some pretty strong claims about his time working with her. He described this meeting where he said Kelly had burst into tears over a disagreement about adding "Since You've Been Gone" to her album. But Kelly wasn't having it. She took to social media to say his story was not only twisted, but a flat-out misrepresentation.
Clarkson came out swinging online late Tuesday, accusing her former producer of spreading misinformation in his new memoir, The Soundtrack of My Life.
In her response, Kelly clarified that she did cry in a meeting with Clive, but it wasn't about "Since You've Been Gone." She says she cried after sharing her own song, Because of You, a song she'd written about her own life and struggles. Clive allegedly told her it was a shitty song, that she was a terrible writer, and that she should just be grateful for the gifts he'd bestowed on her. Can you imagine pouring your heart into a song only to be ripped apart by the very person who's supposed to help you reach your potential? But this story isn't just about a disagreement over songs. It's about the way Clive controlled his artists. Kelly's experience wasn't isolated. For years, rumors have floated around about how Clive allegedly uses his power to shape and sometimes stifle the careers of those under his influence. Other artists that Clive allegedly manipulated were Milli Vanilli. When Milli Vanilli burst onto the music scene over 35 years ago, they didn't just bring hit songs. They brought a massive scandal that would change the pop landscape forever.
I wanted to die. It stopped. Girl, you know it's girl, you know it's girl. 80,000 people. Girl, you know it's girl, you know. You know, I couldn't repeat it 15 times. Girl, it got obvious. So I stopped, I panicked, I ran off stage.
To lose everything so publicly was harsh. You don't know where to turn to because there's no body around you.
What most people don't realize is just how many powerful figures were involved in the deception, including Clive Davis himself, who was head of Arista Records at the time. As the story goes, it wasn't just Milli Vanilli lip-syncing their songs. It was a well-oiled machine designed to profit at any cost. When Rob Pilatus and Fabrice Morvan, two young men who had survived tough upbringings and were hungry for a shot at stardom, met Frank Farian, they were presented with a dream come true. Farian, the producer who had previously helped launch Boney M to fame, offered them a deal. They would perform as Milli Vanilli, but there was a catch. They weren't the ones singing on their records. The music industry giants, including Farian and those at Arista Records, crafted an illusion, and Rob and Fab became the faces of it. This wasn't something they planned, but once they were in, they had no way out. Farian allegedly threatened to make them pay back everything they had earned if they refused to lip sync. And it worked, for a while. Girl You Know It's True was a smash hit, selling millions and catapulting Milli Vanilli to international stardom.
Girl, you know it's true.
industry, including Clive Davis, was happy to keep the money flowing while the charade held up. But once the truth came out, it was Rob and Fab, not the executives, who bore the full weight of the scandal. They faced intense public ridicule and were labeled frauds, while the industry figures who had orchestrated the deception largely escaped unscathed. And then there's the connection with Diddy. Suge Knight, who once ruled the industry as the CEO of Death Row Records, recently claimed from prison that Diddy and other artists were victims of calculated abuse from powerful executives. According to Knight, figures like Clive Davis, Russell Simmons, and Andre Harrell allegedly used drugs, alcohol, and even compromised situations to maintain control over their artists. These weren't just isolated incidents of partying too hard. Knight alleges it was a deliberate strategy, a manipulation tool. In his words, it all started when artists signed to major labels. While Suge says his own artists only smoked weed when they were with him, things changed when they switched to other labels. Suddenly, coke and heavier drugs entered the picture. Suge claimed it was a means to weaken artists' mental states, making them more vulnerable and compliant. He suggests this was a tactic that took Puffy down that lane, referring to the odd and sometimes questionable behavior Diddy later displayed publicly.
The industry is a crooks business. It's been like that for a long time. And the casting couch is real, but it's for women and men.
The alleged strategy was as calculated as it was effective, according to Suge. Artists who were once in control of their image and work would suddenly find themselves in strange environments, exposed to heavy drugs and weird situations that would compromise them, leaving them, as Suge put it, under control. He even mentioned instances of artists, including young performers like Usher and Justin Bieber, being exposed to alcohol, drugs, and a high-pressure lifestyle at an early age. Suge hinted that the industry heads may have even compromised Diddy's manhood, a cryptic statement with dark implications. The allegations don't end there. Davis's support for Diddy over the years has raised questions. When Diddy was sued by ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura for SA, Davis still didn't cut ties. In fact, Diddy was still welcomed at Davis's prestigious pre-Grammy bash, signaling a loyalty that went far beyond simple business partnerships. Davis reportedly stood by Diddy during his darkest controversies, but for what reasons? Suge's claims align with rumors that have circulated in the music industry for decades, that powerful executives use fame, drugs, and compromised situations to keep artists dependent and under their control. And while many dismiss these claims as conspiracy, the connection between Davis and Diddy, the inexplicable support despite scandal after scandal, has made people question whether Suge's accusations might have a kernel of truth. Anyway, despite being in an industry that couldn't care less about the artist, Barry White's velvety baritone voice, often accompanied by the sultry sounds of his orchestra, created the soundtrack to countless romances and intimate moments. His discography reads like a journey through the sweetest symphonies of love. Hits like Can't Get Enough of Your Love, Babe, You're the First, the Last, My Everything, and Never Never Gonna Give You Up are timeless classics that continue to serenade lovers around the world. His music transcended generations, becoming an anthem for lovers young and old.
That music is my lifesaver. That's why I dedicated my life to that lady.
Yet, amid the harmonious melodies and passionate lyrics, Barry White's life was fraught with health challenges, weight struggles, and a love for food that bordered on addiction. These factors would ultimately set the stage for a puzzling and controversial end to the musical legend's life. But let's go back in time and have a look at the life Barry led and what caused his untimely demise. Barry Eugene Carter, popularly known as Barry White, left an indelible mark on the music industry with his deep bass voice and undeniable charm. Born on September 12, 1944, in Galveston, Texas, Barry White's life journey was nothing short of a roller coaster ride filled with ups, downs, and sensational music that set the mood for romance in the 1970s and beyond. Barry White's rise to fame was not without its fair share of drama and surprises. From his early years in Galveston to his teenage escapades and life-altering moments, here's a juicy look at the man behind the sultry voice and the steamy hits that made him a legend. Barry White's parents, Melvin and Sadie, never married, so Barry initially took his mother's last name, later adopting his father's surname. He grew up in the Watts neighborhood of South Central Los Angeles, where he found comfort in his mother's classical music records, sparking his own love for music. Barry started playing piano at a young age, though he later denied claims that he'd played on Jesse Belvin's 1956 hit Goodnight My Love. Despite a tough environment, his talent and his famously deep voice began to shine. Barry and his brother Daryl, however, had some challenges. Daryl, often the troublemaker, had already ended up in juvenile detention by the age of 8.
Hang loose, and the laws are going to take care of those philosophies. Palimony now.
As the brothers entered their mid-teens in the early 1960s, their mischievous activities escalated into something more perilous. "We were a two-man gang respected and feared," White said later via The Independent. "For years, we ran and ruled the streets of our neighborhood." Joining the Businessmen, a formidable territorial gang in South Central, they became embroiled in illicit activities such as substance dealing. The gang, aptly named the Businessmen, considered themselves strategic operators, focusing on what they perceived as business. During his one interview, he said, "So I tell young people the truth, and a lot of them listen," he said. "They know I've been to jail. I've never hid my past, and I never will. I don't want any young person to think he's stuck in that misery." The gang's operations included violent conflicts with rival gangs like the Slawsons, the Gladiators, and the Del Vikings. These confrontations often resulted in serious injuries and even deaths, with weapons ranging from knives and blunt instruments to firearms being used.
I made up my mind to make a change in my life when I was 16 years old.
Tragically, in the same year, his brother Daryl fell victim to a rival gang, paying the ultimate price in the violent gang war. However, his life remained the same. At the age of 16, he found himself behind bars for a daring heist involving $30,000 worth of Cadillac tires. In today's currency, that would be approximately equivalent to $290,000.
I did it more as surviving in the neighborhood, let everybody know where my stand is and where I am. I'm with everybody, I'm involved.
During his stint in jail, Barry had a transformative experience that would set the stage for his future. He heard Elvis Presley crooning "It's Now or Never" on the radio, and that moment left an indelible mark on his soul. Barry credited this encounter with changing the course of his life, but the real turning point came on his 18th birthday. On the very day he was supposed to return to high school, Barry decided to skip class and make a pilgrimage of sorts to the Capitol Records headquarters in Hollywood. He stood across the street from the office, gazing at it for hours, absorbing the lively atmosphere that surrounded it. This experience ignited a fire within him, inspiring him to pursue a career in Hollywood and the entertainment industry, even though he had no formal training in reading or writing music.
Music, for me as a writer-composer, it always is dictated by the music. A lot of writers write lyrics first, then they find the music.
Anyway, following his release from prison, White abandoned his involvement in gang activities and embarked on a music career during the early 1960s, initially as a member of singing groups. His debut release, Too Far to Turn Around, came in 1960 as part of the Upfronts. Subsequently, he worked with various small independent record labels in Los Angeles, recording singles under his own name in the early 1960s. He was often backed by vocal groups like the Atlantics and the Majestics. It's worth noting that White was mistakenly credited with producing Bob and Earl's 1963 hit single Harlem Shuffle, a claim he refuted in his 1999 autobiography, confirming that Gene Page was the actual producer. In 1965, White took on the role of producer for the track Feel Alright by the Bel Cantos, which was released on the Downey label. In 1966, under the alias Lee Barry, he recorded his first single, Man Ain't Nothin', also on the Downey label. Furthermore, he co-wrote Together Forever, a song released by Pat Powdrill and the Power Drills in 1967. In the mid-1960s, Barry White's career was just beginning to take shape. Hired by Bob Keane at Delphi Records, White got a role at Bronco Records as an A&R man, where he wore many hats: songwriter, arranger, and session musician. He worked with artists like Viola Wills and the Bobby Fuller Four, and even helped discover singer Felice Taylor. White co-wrote Taylor's hit I Feel Love Comin' On with his friend Paul Palidi, which became a UK sensation. Their partnership continued, producing more hits for Taylor, including It May Be Winter Outside, But in My Heart It's Spring. White was making a name for himself as a hitmaker behind the scenes. By 1969, White's reputation grew, and he signed a production deal with Forward Records. But his big breakthrough came in 1972 with the girl group Love Unlimited, a group he discovered, trained, and produced. Modeled after the Supremes, the group's debut album, From a Girl's Point of View We Give to You, Love Unlimited made waves. Financial backing from music businessman Larry Nunez helped White get the project off the ground. Love Unlimited Unlimited went on to score multiple hits, including the R&B chart topper I Belong to You. White even married the group's lead singer Glodian James in 1974. Riding this wave, White formed the Love Unlimited Orchestra, originally meant to back the group. Instead, he turned it into his own project, releasing the iconic instrumental single Love's Theme, which soared to #1 on the Billboard pop charts. The orchestra's 1974 album Rhapsody in White continued this success. White's journey from behind-the-scenes producer to frontman happened unexpectedly. While preparing demos for a male solo artist, White ended up recording 3 of his own. Persuaded by Nunez to release them himself, White reluctantly stepped into the spotlight. This led to his debut solo album, I've Got So Much to Give, 1973, with the smash hit I'm Gonna Love You Just a Little More Baby, marking the start of his solo career.
I can't help myself if I wanted to. I'm hung up.
This track reached #1 on the Billboard R&B charts and #3 on the Billboard pop charts in 1973, maintaining a presence in the top 40 for an extended period. While his success on the pop charts gradually waned with the decline of the disco era, White continued to maintain a dedicated fan base throughout his career. Despite releasing several albums in the following 3 years, he struggled to replicate the earlier successes, with none of his singles managing to crack the Billboard Hot 100, except for Change in 1982, which climbed to #12 on the Billboard R&B Top 20. His record label venture imposed significant financial burdens on White, prompting him to shift his focus towards touring and eventually leading to the closure of his label in 1983. After a 4-year hiatus, White signed with A&M Records and in 1987 released The Right Night and Barry White. The single Show You Right from this album made its mark on the Billboard R&B charts, reaching #17. In 1989, White unveiled The Man Is Back and achieved 3 top 40 singles on the Billboard R&B charts. The 1990s saw a resurgence of White's popularity thanks to a nostalgia trend for 1970s music. After contributing to the song The Secret Garden, Sweet Seduction Suite on Quincy Jones's 1989 album Back on the Block, White made a triumphant comeback with a series of increasingly successful albums. In 1991, his album Put Me in Your Mix reached #8 on the Billboard R&B Albums chart, and the title track climbed to #2 on the Billboard R&B Singles chart. In 1994, White released The Icon Is Love, which topped the Billboard R&B album charts, and the single Practice What You Preach gave him his first #1 on the Billboard R&B Singles chart in nearly 2 decades. The album earned a Grammy nomination in the Best R&B Album category, though it lost to TLC's Crazy Sexy Cool. In 1996, White collaborated with Tina Turner on the duet In Your Wildest Dreams. The same year, he contributed to the Space Jam soundtrack, featuring a duet with Chris Rock called Basketball Jones, a remake of Cheech and Chong's 1973 classic. White's final album, Staying Power, released in 1999, produced his last hit song, Staying Power, which reached #45 on the Billboard R&B charts. This single earned him 2 Grammy Awards in the categories of Best Male R&B Vocal Performance and Best Traditional R&B Vocal Performance. Despite his soaring success, Barry White's life was plagued by health issues. He was a towering figure at 6'4" inches and weighed a staggering 364 pounds, which categorized him as morbidly obese, with a BMI of 44.7. The roots of his obesity can be traced back to his childhood, where food scarcity led to his later food addiction. You see, growing up in poverty with a mother struggling to put food on the table, Barry developed unhealthy eating habits, including stealing food to satisfy his insatiable appetite. His addiction to food, coupled with other risk factors such as smoking, led to severe health problems. Smoking was another major contributor to his deteriorating health. His biographer reported witnessing Barry White routinely smoke up to 150 cigarettes a day during their time working together on his biography. Smoking, obesity, and high blood pressure became a dangerous trio that would ultimately affect his heart. In 1998, while working on his biography, Barry White's health was already in decline. He was plagued by dizzy spells and shortness of breath, symptoms he attributed to fatigue. However, these were early indicators of his deteriorating health. In August 1995, during a concert in Los Angeles, Barry nearly collapsed on stage, a stark reminder of his escalating health problems. Despite his health struggles, Barry White embarked on the World Icon Tour in the summer of 1995, a grueling 18-month tour spanning 30 countries and 50 concerts. This tour took a toll on his body. and his blood pressure skyrocketed. Unable to complete the tour, he had to leave it prematurely. In October 1995, he suffered a minor stroke at his Las Vegas home. The stroke was a warning sign of the underlying health issues that would continue to plague him. After the stroke, he embarked on a challenging journey towards recovery, relearning how to walk and talk. However, his determination to continue his music career often overshadowed his health concerns. Despite his family's best efforts to manage his health, Barry White's condition deteriorated further. He was diagnosed with kidney failure in September 2002, which necessitated regular dialysis. A kidney transplant was considered, but his health wasn't stable enough to undergo the procedure. As his health continued to decline, Barry White experienced a series of severe cardiac events, seizures, and strokes. He ultimately suffered a heart attack, leading to his hospitalization. The stress from disagreements about his care among family members and his girlfriend Catherine Denton added to his deteriorating health. Barry White's health battles ultimately took him to a point of no return. On July 4, 2003, at the age of 58, he passed away due to cardiac arrest. It was a somber end for a man who had brought so much joy and romance to the world through his music. In the end, Barry White's legacy isn't just his music, it's a legacy of resistance. A man who, despite all odds, fought to protect his integrity, never bowing to the demands of people like Clive Davis. And though he took some secrets to the grave, those who knew him say that Barry wanted one thing to be known, that Hollywood's power structure, the one represented by people like Clive Davis, comes at a high price, a price Barry White wasn't willing to pay, even if it meant paying with his life. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye.